The night before the National Robotics Championship, I did the unthinkable. I smashed my masterpiece to pieces and announced my withdrawal from the competition. Everyone called me a fraud, claiming I was too scared to face the heat. The internet trolls were relentless, tearing my reputation to shreds. Only Gabriel Thorne, the so-called golden boy of Silicon Valley, played the saint. I believe in Leo Reed's talent. He is the only rival I truly respect. Whatever he's going through, I hope he comes back to prove himself, he told the cameras. In my past life, my robot had been an exact replica of his. No matter how I tried to prove he had stolen my designs, the world turned against me. He played the victim with such grace, saying, "It's fine. Leo can have this design. I'm capable of building something even better." His millions of fans hunted me down online. No one believed that I was the original creator. Driven by spite, I tried to build a new robot overnight. But the power core I used was tampered with, and it exploded, causing severe brain damage. I ended up in the ICU that very night. The public cheered, saying I got exactly what I deserved for being a thief. That same night, my girlfriend signed the papers to stop my life support. Until the moment I died, I couldn't understand how he got my data. I didn't know that my own girlfriend had been sleeping with him the whole time. Then I opened my eyes. I was back on the day before the championship. Leo, this biomimetic movement design is insane. We're definitely taking home the $5 million prize this year. Wyatt Banks's excited voice pulled me back to reality. I stared at the man-sized robot in front of me and felt a cold shiver run down my spine. I'm going to submit the data to the portal right now. Then we just wait for tomorrow's live demo. Wyatt started tapping away at his laptop, a huge grin on his face. "Stop," I shouted, my voice cracking as I grabbed his arm. "Wait, I have a better idea." My hands were shaking as I opened my own laptop. I navigated to Gabriel Thorne's social media page and saw his latest post. It was a video demonstration of his robot. It was identical to mine. Every single parameter was a mirror image. What the hell? I saw Gabriel's robot this afternoon, and it looked nothing like this. Wyatt gasped, leaning over my shoulder. How did that snake steal our work so fast? I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. In my previous life, I had seen Gabriel's different design earlier that day too, which made me lower my guard. I only realized his robot was a clone of mine 30 minutes before the submission deadline. Back then, I had desperately reported him to the organizers and posted my build logs online. But the committee didn't believe me, and Gabriel's fanatical followers swarmed my comments. Leo the Leech is at it again, trying to claim Gabriel's genius as his own. Have you no shame? Gabriel posted his data first. How dare you fake your timestamps to frame him? The verbal abuse was a tidal wave that nearly drowned me. In a fit of desperation, I had stayed up all night to modify my bot, hoping to prove my worth on stage. But during the live demo, Gabriel's robot was, once again, exactly like my new version. The audience mocked me, throwing water bottles and trash while I stood frozen on stage. Refusing to give up, I tried to force my robot to perform a complex maneuver. That's when the explosion happened, sending me straight to the brink of death. Without me in the way, Gabriel won the championship easily. He got the prize money and was scouted by a top-tier tech mogul. His future was set. While I lay dying, the competition officials claimed they found explosive materials in my robot. They told the press I was a domestic terrorist trying to blow up the venue. When that statement hit the news, I was expelled. My parents were doxxed and harassed. People sent funeral wreaths to their house and smeared red paint on their door. The night I was hospitalized, my girlfriend signed my death warrant. She told the world I didn't make it through surgery. The internet celebrated my passing. My parents, broken by the grief and the shame, took their own lives shortly after. As a ghost, I watched them die. My rage was so cold, so deep, that I refused to move on. And then I woke up. I was back. This time, I will find the truth. I will clear my name and make Gabriel Thorne pay for every single thing he did. Leo, we still have time to change the design. This isn't just about the money. The winner gets a full scholarship and a spot in the elite labs. We can't just quit, Wyatt said, his face pale after the organizers ignored our complaint. I'll do the modifications myself. Wyatt, you keep talking to the officials, I said firmly. This time, I didn't trust anyone, not even my best friend. In my last life, my girlfriend, Ivy Rivers, had stayed by my side the whole night I worked. Later, I saw her leaning into Gabriel's arms. There was no doubt about it. She was the one feeding him my data. But Ivy didn't know the first thing about coding or mechanical engineering. Even if she gave him the files, she couldn't explain the core logic of the operating system. Gabriel and I had been rivals since freshman year. I was always his shadow. Every idea I had, he somehow executed first. I never even walked on the same side of the street as him. There was no way he could have physically seen my progress. So how did his code match mine line for line? Even after being reborn, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Thinking of Ivy made my heart ache. We were childhood sweethearts. We were planning a life together. And yet, at the most critical moment of my life, she pushed me into the abyss. I slapped myself hard across the face to snap out of it. I had work to do. I began tearing the robot apart, rewriting the neural networks from scratch. When I first designed this bot, I had an upgraded version in mind. I hadn't used it because the performance was slightly unstable. I had been confident that the conservative version was enough to win. But now I had to gamble everything. An hour later, I stared at the new code and took a shaky breath. I was alone in the lab. Unless Gabriel was a literal god, there was no way he could know what I just did. I wiped the sweat from my forehead. Just as I was about to upload the new parameters, Wyatt burst through the door. Leo. Gabriel just updated his public project files. Look. My heart dropped. I snatched the laptop and watched the new video. No way. I whispered. The data Gabriel just uploaded was the exact same unstable upgrade I had finished minutes ago. I watched the video of his robot moving with fluid, lifelike precision. The comments were already flooded with praise. Gabriel had posted a status update. I thought my first version was enough to win. But looking at the competition, I decided to push the limits. It's a bit unstable, but if I can get some feedback from the pros, it's worth the risk. Cold sweat poured down my back. The core of this upgrade was a specific algorithm I had dreamed about. I treated that code like a gift from heaven. No one else could have known it. Was Gabriel using a world-class hacker? Was he watching me through my own webcam? I had a terrifying feeling that the truth was even darker than that. Leo, what do we do? The whole internet is calling for your head, Wyatt said, his voice trembling. I stared at my phone screen. Gabriel's fans were coming for me like a pack of wolves. Look at this loser. Can't even copy properly anymore, can you? Leo has been obsessed with Gabriel for years. But a rat will always be a rat. You'll never catch up to a god. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. It's fine. I have another robot. I'll use that one for the entry. I prepared to lock myself in the lab again. Just then my phone buzzed. It was Ivy. I had told her specifically not to call me before the competition. I stared at her name on the screen with cold eyes and blocked her number immediately. I don't believe he can read my mind for this one too, I told Wyatt. With nothing left to lose, I dragged a heavy crate from the back of the room. I cut all network connections to the lab. I made sure no hacker could see what I was doing. I carefully pulled out a spider-like drone. This model was actually more advanced than the humanoid one. It was designed for search and rescue in extreme environments. It was a prototype I had never shown a soul. 3 hours later, the assembly was complete. I tuned the sensors and checked the legs. It was a beautiful, terrifying piece of machinery. It could shift into 18 different forms to navigate any terrain. There was no way Gabriel Thorne knew about this. I took a deep breath and started the local upload. Suddenly, the computer lagged. The loading icon spun slowly. A terrible premonition gripped my chest. As soon as my upload finished, I checked Gabriel's profile. His entry had changed. It was now a spider-shaped robot. I scrolled through the specs. Every joint, every sensor, every motor was identical to mine. And his timestamp was exactly 1 minute before mine. Hey everyone. I realized there are too many humanoids this year. I decided to go with my hex spider design instead. If you guys like it, I might release a hobbyist model soon. I watched his video and felt a roar of fury. I swept everything off my desk in a blind rage. How is this happening? I screamed. I was on the verge of a total mental breakdown. Wyatt ran back in and saw the spider bot on the floor. He understood instantly. Is it the committee? Are they giving him your files in real time? He asked. I stood there, surrounded by a dark, suffocating energy. There were only 2 hours left until the final submission deadline. It was impossible to build a third robot. I'm calling the organizers, I hissed. I reached for my phone and saw 100 missed calls from Ivy. Since I blocked her, she had used someone else's phone to send a text. Leo, I love you. My love for you is like a shadow. Where you go, I go. If you vanish, I cease to exist. Something clicked in my brain. A memory flashed by, but I couldn't quite catch it. I shook my head and dialed the competition hotline. I demanded an explanation. The official on the line sounded bored. Mr. Reed, this competition is sponsored by the National Academy of Sciences. The board is led by 2 Nobel laureates. We don't have backdoors for students. Especially not for. The voice turned mocking. Let's be honest. Your school isn't exactly prestigious. You don't have the kind of pull to bribe an academician. Instead of throwing dirt on your peers, maybe you should focus on your own lack of talent. The line went dead. They wouldn't even listen to me. Leo, it's getting worse. Wyatt showed me his phone. The top trending hashtag was hashtag Leo Reed the Thief. How shameless can you be? Copying him in real time. Kick him out. Gabriel must have a mole in his camp. How else is this guy stealing designs so fast? Gabriel had posted another kind message. True genius often thinks alike. Maybe Leo and I are just on the same wavelength. It's fine. I'll let him have this spider design. I'll compete with something else. Underneath, his fans were swooning. Gabriel is such a saint. He's so generous to a thief. Even if you give a beggar a Ferrari, he won't know how to drive it. Leo is pathetic. This is disgusting. Someone should call the cops on this parasite. I felt my blood running cold. My mind was racing. Was I supposed to give up? Or was I going to walk right into the same trap as last time? No. I wouldn't accept this. There had to be something I was missing. In my state of extreme anger, my mind became unnaturally sharp. I replayed every memory of Gabriel Thorne. Before I met him, I was the undisputed prodigy. But once he arrived at my university, my light faded. He always seemed one step ahead of me. He knew what I was thinking before I even said it. A spark lit up in my head. Wyatt, do you believe two people can have the exact same brain waves? Wyatt looked at me like I'd lost it. No way. Even identical twins have different patterns. It's scientifically impossible. If I gave you a robot you were perfectly familiar with, what's the fastest you could build a new one? I asked. Wyatt thought about it seriously. Leo, I'm good, but I'm not you. If I had all the parts ready, assembly and calibration would take at least half a day. These aren't Lego sets. You can't just copy-paste a physical machine in minutes. I started to laugh. The sound was loud and a little bit crazed. You're right. Building from scratch takes hours. There's no way two identical machines can appear within 1 minute of each other. It defies the laws of physics. I stared at the two robots in my lab. My eyes were burning with a wild intensity. I dragged the spider-bot under the heavy industrial press. My finger hovered over the button. I found your weakness, you bastard, I whispered. The heavy pneumatic cylinder hissed, hydraulic fluid groaning under 4 tons of downward pressure. Crunch. The titanium aluminum chassis of the spider drone buckled like a soda can. Precision-milled optical sensors popped, sapphire lenses turning into crystalline dust under the steel die. Wiring harnesses tore, spraying sparks. Across the concrete floor of the lab, Wyatt stared at me with his mouth hanging open, his face completely drained of color. Leo, what are you doing? He screamed, lunging toward the emergency stop lever. That's 3 months of work. That's $30,000 of micro actuators. Step back, Wyatt, I said. My voice was flat. No trembling. No tears. Just the glacial calm of a sniper. Zeroing in on a target through heavy fog. I dragged the humanoid bipedal prototype, the one I had spent 6 months calibrating down to the microsecond, and shoved it onto the steel anvil beneath the press. I hit the dual palm buttons. Bang. The articulated spine snapped. The rare earth magnetic motors cracked in half. Lithium polymer cells punctured, venting thick, sweet-smelling white smoke into the exhaust hood. In less than 90 seconds, $2 million prototypes, the pinnacle of collegiate robotics, were reduced to a pile of twisted scrap metal. I pulled out my phone, unlocked my official competitor profile on the National Robotics Championship portal, and navigated to the withdrawal tab. Reason for withdrawal: intellectual insolvency and psychological collapse. I typed a short, public statement on social media. I concede. Gabriel Thorne is the superior intellect. I cannot compete against someone who anticipates my every move before I even make it. My prototypes are destroyed. I withdraw from the championship permanently. I hit post. You're crazy, Wyatt whispered, sinking onto an overturned plastic crate, holding his head in his hands. You just gave him everything. You just handed him the crown, the $5 million, the venture capital, the entire narrative. Look at your phone, Wyatt, I said softly, wiping oil from my knuckles with a shop rag. Count to 10. Wyatt pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. 1, 2, 3. At the 7-second mark, a notification chimed. Gabriel Thorne had quote retweeted my concession. His video was already live. He was sitting in his pristine, glass-walled Silicon Valley workshop, wearing an immaculate black turtleneck, looking into the camera, with an expression of profound, saintly melancholy. I am deeply saddened by Leo Reed's decision, Gabriel's voice purred through the speaker, rich, smooth, and laced with performative sorrow. Leo is a brilliant mind, but true innovation requires emotional resilience. I believe in his talent. He is the only rival I truly respect. Whatever he's going through, I hope he comes back to prove himself. Until then, my team will continue to push the boundaries of science for the betterment of humanity. Underneath the video, the comment section exploded like a ruptured sewer line. Gabriel is such a class act. A true gentleman. Leo the leech broke his own toys because he couldn't handle getting exposed. Good riddance. Keep that fraud out of the tech industry. I looked at the screen, and a dark, cold smile spread across my face. He posted that within 30 seconds of my announcement, I said, pointing at the timestamp. Look at the lighting in his video. Look at the background. Render. That video wasn't recorded on a webcam in real time. It was rendered, color graded and cued. Wyatt blinked, his brow furrowing as he looked closer at the video. Wait. He's wearing a studio microphone. The background displays my exact hex spider CAD models on his auxiliary monitors. He knew I was going to break, I said, walking toward the medical kit mounted on the lab wall, because he thinks he broke me in my past life. What past life? Wyatt asked, looking at me like I had completely lost my mind. Forget the past life, I said, pulling out a pair of sterile surgical tweezers, a high-intensity ultraviolet pen light, and a bottle of iodine. Wyatt, I need you to do something for me. And if you flinch, you might paralyze me for life. Leo, this is insane, Wyatt muttered, his hands trembling as he held the UV pen light against the back of my neck. I was sitting backwards on a metal stool, my shirt pulled down to my shoulder blades. For the past 20 minutes, I had been tracing the physical timeline of my interactions with Ivy over the last 4 months. 3 months ago, I had suffered from a sudden, mysterious onset of severe migraines. Ivy had insisted on taking me to a private holistic neurological clinic run by a family friend of hers. They had given me a cervical trigger point injection for pain relief. The migraines had stopped. But 2 days later, Gabriel Thorne had filed his first matching patent for my biomimetic balance algorithm. Do you see anything beneath the C3 vertebra? I asked, my jaw clenched against the stinging iodine Wyatt had smeared across my skin. Wyatt leaned in, shining the 365 nanometers UV beam against the base of my skull. Suddenly he gasped. Holy shit. Wyatt whispered, his voice cracking with pure terror. Leo, there's a luminescent grid under your skin. It's geometric. Through the ultraviolet refraction, a faint bioluminescent lattice, no larger than a postage stamp, was visible just beneath the dermal layer, intertwined with the sensory nerve roots along my cervical spine. It's not a software hack, I said, cold sweat dripping down my ribs. It's a bioneural telemetry tap. It all made sense now. Ivy hadn't been stealing files off my flash drives. She didn't need to understand my code. The chip was a high-density, black market neural mesh, a technology developed for paralyzed patients to translate motor cortex impulses into digital signals. Every time I visualized a mechanical joint, every time my fingers typed a line of code, every time I visualized a circuit schematic in my mind's eye, the sensory impulses were converted into high-frequency RF telemetry and transmitted to an external receiver. Gabriel wasn't a genius. He wasn't even an engineer. He was a human Xerox machine connected to a high-speed generative AI supercomputer that reconstituted my brain waves into physical CAD files and machine code in real time. We have to go to the hospital right now, Wyatt yelled, dropping the tweezers. We have to get the police. This is assault. This is biological warfare. No, I said, turning around and grabbing his wrist with the force of an iron vice. The police won't believe a word of this. Gabriel's family sits on the board of the tech conglomerate that manufactures these neural implants. If we walk into a hospital, the records will disappear, the chip will be extracted, under the guise of an emergency cyst removal, and I will die in an accidental medical malpractice incident before sunrise. Wyatt's eyes were wide with panic. Then what do? We leave the chip right where it is, I said. I picked up the UV light, looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the fume hood, and let out a soft, venomous chuckle. Gabriel wants my brain? I'm going to feed him a masterpiece that will burn his entire kingdom to the ground. For the next 4 hours, I sat in the center of the dark, destroyed lab, wearing an EEG monitoring headset Wyatt had reconfigured to read my own brainwave output. I didn't touch a keyboard. I didn't draw on a whiteboard. I closed my eyes. I used the full, terrifying capacity of my intellect to construct a phantom. In my mind's eye, I began assembling a revolutionary humanoid robot project, Leviathan. I visualized every single component with crystalline, microscopic precision. An ultra-dense, solid-state graphene supercapacitor power core capable of delivering 40 kilowatts of continuous burst discharge. A hyperfluid harmonic rotary actuator system that could mimic human tendon elasticity with 99% kinetic efficiency. A deep learning neural network architecture based on nonlinear quantum chaos theory, a mathematical model so elegant, so advanced, it looked like the next 50 years of artificial intelligence compressed into a single operating matrix. It was on paper the most magnificent machine ever conceived by human imagination. It had only one fatal, invisible flaw. Deep within the harmonic resonance equations of the power core step-down transformer, I embedded a microfractional frequency vulnerability, 432.8 megahertz. At standard operational loads, the power core would run at 98% efficiency, generating virtually zero heat. But if an external RF signal broadcast at 432.8 MHz came within 50 meters of the machine, the resonance would trigger an undampened electromagnetic feedback loop inside the graphene capacitors. The energy would not discharge safely through the grounding plane. It would feed directly into the central processing unit, incinerating the core logic gates, melting the rare earth magnets, and locking the entire system into an irreversible, self-consuming thermal runaway. I spent 3 hours refining the design in my mind, letting the neural mesh in. My neck drank every single equation, every structural tolerance, every line of assembly code. At 3 a.m., my satellite sync diagnostic monitor detected a short, high-bandwidth burst of encrypted RF data, leaving the node in my cervical spine. The data had been sent. 30 minutes later, Wyatt's laptop chimed with a breaking news alert from TechCrunch. Breaking. Gabriel Thorne announces emergency entry for National Championship. Project Promethean. A revolutionary 40-kilowatt solid-state humanoid robot capable of unprecedented autonomous agility. Wyatt looked at the article, then looked at me, a cold shiver running through his body. He took the bait, Wyatt whispered. Of course he did, I replied, standing up from the stool. A thief doesn't check the gold for poison when he's too busy bragging about how much he stole. Just then the outer glass door of the laboratory clicked open. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Light, hesitant, familiar footsteps. Ivy Rivers stood in the doorway, wearing an oversized beige sweater, holding a paper bag from my favorite late-night bakery, her eyes filled with sweet, tearful concern. Leo? Ivy whispered, her lower lip trembling as she looked at the wreckage of the destroyed robots scattered across the floor. She dropped the bakery bag onto a table and rushed toward me, throwing her arms around my neck, burying her face into my chest, weeping with all the passion of a devoted, heartbroken lover. Oh my God, Leo. I saw your post online. I was so scared. Why did you smash everything? Why didn't you answer my calls? I stood completely still. I didn't hug her back. I didn't push her away. I looked down at the soft crown of her hair, remembering the icy grip of her fingers in my past life as she signed the order to disconnect my ventilator, while I choked on my own blood. I gave up, Ivy, I said softly, injecting a hollow, defeated tremble into my voice. Gabriel is too smart. Every time I build something, he's already 3 steps ahead of me. I'm an empty shell. Ivy pulled back slightly, looking up at me with wide, glistening eyes reaching up to gently caress my cheek. Don't say that, baby, she cooed, her thumb softly brushing against the side of my neck, right over the spot where the neural mesh was anchored beneath the skin. You're a genius. You just need to rest. You've been working too hard. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small amber glass vial filled with clear liquid, along with a sterile syringe. Look, I brought your migraine medicine, Ivy said, her voice dropping into a soothing, hypnotic rhythm. The doctor said if you feel overwhelmed, this will help calm the neural inflammation. Let me give you the injection, and then we can go back to my apartment and sleep. You don't have to think about robotics ever again. I looked at the vial. It wasn't a sedative. It was a high-dose neuroparalytic compound designed to induce temporary cognitive dissociation. The exact substance that had left me sluggish and disoriented in my past life during the championship demo. Ivy, I said quietly. Yes, honey. Do you remember what you texted me earlier? Ivy blinked, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. What text? My love for you is like a shadow, I quoted, my voice dropping into an icy, razor-sharp monotone. Where you go, I go. If you vanish, I cease to exist. Ivy's hand froze against my neck. It's a lovely poem, Ivy, I continued, stepping back, breaking her grip. Except a shadow doesn't just follow a man. A shadow only exists because it blocks the light from reaching the floor. I reached behind my back, picked up an industrial handheld EMP frequency jammer Wyatt had built 2 hours ago, and flipped the toggle switch. Bzz. A sharp, high-pitched electromagnetic pulse radiated through the room. Ivy gasped, dropping the syringe onto the floor. The glass shattered, the clear liquid pooling on the concrete. At the exact same moment, the tiny Bluetooth transmitter hidden inside the pendant of her necklace let out a sharp, burning pop, emitting a wisp of gray smoke. Ivy took 2 frantic steps backward, clutching her chest, her innocent, fragile facade disintegrating in real time. Leo, what did you do? She shrieked. The telemetry link is dead, Ivy, I said, walking toward her. Your transmitter is fried. The encrypted server at Gabriel's villa just lost its primary feed. Ivy backed away until her spine hit the heavy metal tool cabinets. Her face had turned an ugly, mottled gray, her eyes darting frantically toward the door. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice turning shrill and defensive. You're having a mental breakdown. You're paranoid. Am I? Wyatt stepped forward, turning his laptop screen toward her. On the screen was the bank transfer history from an offshore shell corporation. Registered to Thorne Ventures. Deposit, $250,000 to Ivy Rivers. Reference, biological interface. Maintenance. Deposit, $500,000 to Ivy Rivers. Reference, project extraction protocol. $750,000, I said, stopping 2 feet in front of her. That was the price of my brain. That was the price of my life. Ivy stared at the banking records. The terror in her eyes suddenly hardened into a venomous, snarling hatred. So what? Ivy hissed, all pretense of affection gone. You think you're a god? Leo? You think you're special because you can write a few algorithms? You're a penniless nobody from a working-class family. You would have spent the next 20 years begging for research grants in a basement. She pointed a shaking finger at my face. Gabriel has power. Gabriel has connections. His father owns the venture funds that control this entire industry. With your brain and his money, we were going to build an empire. You were supposed to be our battery, Leo. You were supposed to sit in the dark and feed us while we ruled the world. A battery? I let out a low, cold laugh. I reached out, grabbed her wrist, twisted it behind her back and clicked a pair of heavy industrial steel zip ties around her hands, pinning her to the tool. Cabinet. You got one thing right, Ivy, I whispered into her ear. I am a battery. And tomorrow afternoon, at the National Championship, you and Gabriel are going to feel what happens when that battery overloads. The grand arena of the National Convention Center in San Francisco was packed to its 15,000-seat capacity. Over 200 television networks, venture capital firms, military, procurement officers, and technology journalists surrounded the massive, circular competition stage. Giant, 80-foot LED jumbotrons hung from the ceiling, broadcasting the event live to over 40 million viewers worldwide. At the center of the VIP lounge sat Gabriel Thorne. He was surrounded by 6 private security guards, 3 personal publicists, and his billionaire father, Victor Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Defense Dynamics. Standing beside Gabriel was Promethean, the 6-foot-tall, polished titanium humanoid robot built using the poison blueprints I had beamed into his receiver 8 hours ago. The machine was breathtaking. Its matte black carbon fiber panels gleamed under the high-intensity arena spotlights. Its internal solid-state core hummed with a quiet, terrifying resonance, moving its limbs with fluid, hypnotic grace that made the audience gasp with every step. Ladies and gentlemen, the head judge, a Nobel laureate in cybernetics, announced into the House microphone, we are witnessing a paradigm shift in human history. Gabriel Thorne's Promethean has achieved a kinetic response latency of 0.2 milliseconds. This is not merely engineering, this is pure genius. The arena erupted into thunderous applause. Gabriel stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke suit, offering his trademark humble, saintly smile to the roaring crowd. Thank you, Gabriel spoke into his lapel mic, his voice echoing across the stadium. True innovation does not belong to one man. It belongs to humanity. I only wish my former colleague Leo Reed were here today to witness what true collaboration can achieve. The crowd cheered even louder, several tech influencers wiping away performative tears of admiration. He's here. A voice rang out from the main entrance tunnel. The heavy steel security doors swung open. The music stopped. The cameras swung around in an instant. I walked down the central ramp into the arena. I wore no team jersey, no sponsor logos. Just dark jeans, a black tactical jacket and heavy leather boots. My hands were in my pockets, my head held high, my eyes locking onto Gabriel's across the 100-foot expanse of the arena floor. Beside me walked Wyatt Banks, carrying a heavy, flight-certified Pelican case, flanked by 4 federal agents from the Department of Justice's Intellectual Property and Espionage Division. The crowd erupted into stunned murmurs. Is that Leo Reed? The thief who smashed his own robots? What is he doing here with federal agents? Gabriel's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A flicker of deep, instinctual panic crossed his hazel eyes, quickly replaced by his practiced, condescending mask. Leo, Gabriel said through his microphone, opening his arms in a welcoming gesture. You came after all. I'm glad you decided to watch history being made. I stopped at the edge of the competition ring, looking up at him on the elevated stage. I didn't come to watch history, Gabriel, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the arena's acoustic system. I came to collect my property. Victor Thorne, Gabriel's father, stood up from his VIP seat, his face darkening with rage. Security, remove this lunatic. He withdrew from the competition. He has no standing to be on this floor. He has standing under Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1832, the lead federal agent announced, stepping onto the stage, holding up a gold federal badge and a search and seizure warrant signed by a federal magistrate. Federal investigation into black market neural telemetry espionage and corporate treason. The arena fell dead silent. 40 million viewers watched as the giant jumbotrons switched from Gabriel's face to a split-screen display of the federal warrant. Espionage? Gabriel laughed, though the sound was tight, high-pitched and soaked in sweat. This is absurd. I designed Promethean from scratch in my private lab. Every line of code is registered to my name. Is it? I asked. I pulled my right hand from my pocket. In my palm was a small, high-frequency RF transponder tuned to a precise frequency, 432.8 megahertz. Gabriel, I said, stepping onto the stage. If you built that robot, tell the judges what the harmonic damping coefficient is on the secondary capacitor manifold. Gabriel blinked, his throat moving as he swallowed hard. It's a proprietary variable algorithm. I don't have to disclose trade secrets to a disqualified contestant. You don't know, I said calmly, because you didn't write it. I thought it into existence at 2:15 a.m. while you were sitting in your penthouse waiting for your neural receiver to ping. You're insane. Gabriel screamed, his composure completely shattering on live television. Security. Shoot him. He's threatening the competition. I pressed the red button on the RF transponder. Click. A silent, 432.8 megahertz pulse radiated across the arena stage. Inside Promethean's titanium chest, the solid-state graphene capacitors began to hum. The hum wasn't subtle. It rose in pitch, from a low subaudible vibration to a deafening, metallic shriek that echoed through the stadium's sound system. What is happening? The head judge yelled, backing away from the machine. Shut it down. Gabriel, execute the emergency kill switch. I am, Gabriel cried, frantically tapping the screen of his master controller tablet. Nothing happened. The screen of his tablet turned red, flashing an unoverridable system error. Critical harmonic overload. Read Leviathan protocol engaged. Promethean's articulated limbs locked into rigid, vibrating extension. The internal temperature gauge on its chest panel spiked. 200 degrees Celsius. 400 degrees Celsius. 800 degrees Celsius. The matte black carbon fiber panels along its torso began to glow a dull, cherry red. Then the central core did not explode into dangerous shrapnel. It executed the internal subroutine I had baked into its firmware. The robot's left arm raised mechanically, pointing its index finger directly at Gabriel Thorne's face. The internal speaker of the robot, the one Gabriel claimed was driven by his proprietary voice synthesis AI, activated. My voice boomed from the robot's chest, rattling the arena rafters. Property of Leo Reed. Architecture ID, Reed 9941. Dedicated to the thieves who lack the intellect to build their own future. Crack flash. A blinding arc of blue electrical fire erupted from the robot's power core, incinerating the central logic board in a shower of brilliant sparks. The 80-foot jumbotrons above the arena flickered, and then displayed the raw, uncompressed telemetry logs captured by the Federal Task Force. The real-time data stream from the neural mesh in my neck. The matching IP addresses routing directly into Gabriel Thorne's private server rack. The high-definition audio recording of Ivy Rivers confessing to the entire conspiracy in my lab 4 hours ago. The entire arena sat in horrified, absolute silence. Gabriel Thorne stood on the stage, his tailored suit stained with soot, his hair disheveled, his mouth open, staring at the smoking, melted ruin of the machine that was supposed to make him a god. No, Gabriel whimpered, dropping his controller, falling to his knees in the ash of the destroyed core. No. My career, my company. Victor Thorne collapsed back into his leather chair, clutching his chest as federal agents moved in, surrounding both father and son. Gabriel Thorne, the lead agent said, stepping over the charred cables, snapping steel handcuffs around Gabriel's wrists. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit economic espionage, biological assault with a deadly neural device, and federal procurement fraud. As the agents dragged Gabriel backward down the stage ramp, he thrashed wildly, screaming into the flashing cameras. Leo, you cheated. You gave me broken code. You tricked me. Leo. I stood at the edge of the stage looking down at him. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the burning need to yell. I felt the absolute, unshakable peace of a creator who had taken back the fire he had stolen from the gods. I didn't trick you, Gabriel, I said softly as the crowd began to roar in thunderous, standing vindication. I just gave you what you asked for. My mind. 11. The unburdened sky. 2 weeks later. The private surgical ward at Stanford Medical Center was quiet, filled with the soft morning light streaming through the garden windows. Dr. Harrison, the nation's leading neurosurgeon, pulled off his surgical loops. With a satisfied smile, dropping a microscopic, silver and silicon mesh into a stainless steel specimen dish with a tiny metallic ping. Complete extraction, Dr. Harrison announced. Zero neural tract damage. The sensory pathways along C3 and C4 are completely intact. You're free, Leo. I reached up with my right hand, touching the small, sterile bandage at the base of my skull. The phantom buzz was gone. The dull, suffocating pressure that had lived behind my temples for months had vanished, replaced by a clarity so vast, so pure, it felt like taking a breath of mountain air after drowning in an oil slick. How does it feel? Wyatt asked, walking into the room carrying 2 cups of black coffee. Quiet, I smiled, taking a cup. Wonderfully quiet. The news on the wall-mounted television played silently in the background. Thorne Defense Dynamics stripped of all federal contracts, SEC launches, criminal investigation into $50 million securities fraud. Gabriel Thorne denied bail, facing 25 years in federal prison. Ivy Rivers sentenced to 12 years for accessory to biological assault and corporate espionage. I picked up the remote and clicked the screen off. I didn't need to watch their ruin. Their names were already fading into the footnotes of legal history. I swung my legs over the edge of the hospital bed and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Outside, the California sun was bright and unyielding. The sky stretched out across the horizon, clean, vast, and completely open. Wyatt walked up beside me, handing me a heavy manila folder stamped with the gold seal of the National Science Foundation. $5 million in sovereign research grants, Wyatt said, his eyes shining with pride. Full autonomy. Our own independent research institute. They're just waiting for you to name the first project. I looked down at the blank blueprint sheet inside the folder. My fingers were steady. My mind was clear. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, every single line I drew belonged entirely, beautifully, and indestructibly to me.